Hi guys, be blessed in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. I am doing this video today on a contemporary topic that is associated with the upcoming economic destruction and the beginning of the age of tribulation, also called sometimes the age of Aquarius. Namely, in this regard, on the topic of the precious metal paper market manipulations by the globalists to prevent the people of preparing for what is coming and to keep them away from saving real money and securing their wealth and freedom. We know key to the upcoming Antichrist tyrannical system will be the total enslavement of mankind through total digital and biometric surveillance.
Direct brain-computer interfaces, millions of tiny nanorobots inside your body, hacking human beings, the ability to hack humans. It's the technology that converts biological data into digital data that can be analyzed by computers. Now, today or in 5 or 10 years, any algorithm of Microsoft or Amazon or the government would be able to know such a thing. And COVID is critical because this is what convinces people to accept, to legitimize total biometric surveillance. We want to stop this epidemic. We need not just to monitor people, we need to monitor what's happening under their skin. Exactly the same technology can determine what you think about the government. The thing is, we know that you are watching this and we also know how you feel. You just have a lot of sensors and an AI which analyzes it, and that's it. You have the worst totalitarian regime in history. And COVID is important because COVID legitimizes some of the crucial steps, even in democratic countries.
And the enforcement of this total surveillance tyrannical system should be achieved by the use of digital currency, digital ID, and comprehensive compulsory registration and reporting obligations, which should make people totally dependent on the digital prison system, where they have no freedom and no control over their assets anymore. Anything should be registered, and any buying and selling should need authorized allowance. To achieve this, people must not be able to store and secure their wealth and thereby should not be able to buy and sell independently of surveillance. Precious metals are the main means to store wealth and secure independence. Therefore, they work against them by manipulating the markets and leading the people away from precious metals. Now, what happened in the precious metal markets? Silver and gold surged last year and until end of January 2026 and reached new highs. Then a sudden crash occurred. Silver fell like a stone and lost 40% of its value within a few trading days, from around $120 to $70. And it is still down until today, 4 months later, after several other collapses when it starts to recover towards $90. And this happened despite physical silver faces a 6-year global structural deficit amounting to millions of ounces failing demand, which means that the global demand for physical silver is much higher than the amount available on the market and the amount produced by mining companies. How is this possible? Answer: in a functional market, it is not possible, unless the value of the traded asset becomes suddenly almost worthless. Next question. Did precious metal become almost worthless at January 31, when prices collapsed by 30% in a few hours at the New York Commodity Exchange, also called Comex? Answer: no. In contrast, geopolitical tensions were rising again with the start of the war with Iran by February 2026, resulting in even more economic disturbances, inflation, that is devaluation of paper money, and thus destruction of wealth, and thereby upvaluation of rare assets like precious metals. In addition, silver is not only a rare asset that protects against devaluation of paper money, exactly like gold, it is also an industrial resource necessary for the production of highly technological products, like solar panels, computers, electrical cars, etc. 2025 was the 6th year of structural deficit on the silver market. This alone has the potential of skyrocketing prices. But the opposite happened. Precious metal prices collapsed by 30% in a few hours. We know that this was an orchestrated action by large players at the paper silver futures market in collaboration with the Comex itself. The Comex started to suddenly increase the margin, that is, the amount to be deposited for one futures contract. And the large players poured thousands of short contracts at once into the market, which initiated a downwards cascade effect. At first, the silver price suffered a sudden decrease by $2 or $3. Then many small investors were set under pressure by higher margin calls, which kicked them out of the market, and the price fell again, which in turn triggered a huge amount of stop-loss orders, such that the price decline accelerated again. At the end of this trading day at the Comex, silver lost 30% of its value. It fell from around $120 per ounce to around $85. This was a massacre, an orchestrated action by globalist players to devalue precious metals. It was an attack of the satanic globalist forces that intend to enslave mankind against the ordinary people who try to protect their little wealths for which they worked their life long. It was an expropriation action and a transfer of wealth from the sincere and righteous people to the big globalist billionaires, something which is going on since the introduction of paper money through devaluation of this money, and central bank monopoly currency control against the interests of people by inflating money through money supply extension and interest rate changes. Subsequently, the prices regained a little bit, but only to become pushed down again. There were at least 2 further periods of silver price suppression, where silver prices were pushed down similar to January 30, resulting in a 10 to 15% decline again. The reasons were exactly the same as on January 30. The Comex raised the margins while large institutional players throw short contracts into the market, which means they sold silver. And narratives are thrown, like sand is thrown into the eyes of investors, persuading people that global disasters like the Iran war are suddenly bad for precious metal prices, which is a lie. In fact, the opposite is true. But this again triggered rapid downstream cascades, resulting in the observed price collapses. Now, while mass media and banks proclaim that precious metal run is over, and so-called trading floor experts allege that there are clear economic reasons behind the precious metal price collapse, we can prove that it was 100% orchestrated and had nothing to do with fundamental factors like economic or geopolitical data, governmental finance, or future prospect of dollar stability. JP Morgan, one of the biggest short contract holders at the precious metal future market, threw short contracts into the market when the downstream cascade started on January 30. And they bought contracts back exactly at the bottom price of $78. This is not a coincidence, but evidence of the orchestrated market manipulation. It is also important to understand that the Comex precious metal future market is a market where largely no metal is traded, but only future contracts, that is, promises on future delivery, which regularly never take place, because contracts are either rolled over into the next period or they just expire and are cleared without delivery of any physical metal. So what they are trading there is just paper. And the amount of such paper silver traded is 300 times higher than the amount of silver available. The precious metal market is relatively small, that is optimally suitable for price manipulations by large players at the paper market, which is being processed. The big institutional players, with JP Morgan leading the way, applied a vicious strategy to thrash precious metal prices downwards and thereby destroy trillions of wealth of small investors. This was a very profitable strategy for them, as they sold silver future contracts when the price was high, namely at $120 per ounce on January 30. And they bought the silver back after thrashing the price downwards at $78. This is a profit of $42 per ounce. We can easily calculate their profit. When they threw 5,000 short contracts into the market, with 5,000 ounces each, then they sold 25 million ounces at once. And their profit at $78, with $42 profit per ounce, amounted to more than $1 billion. At the end of the price decline, which they orchestrated themselves, they just collected all the ounces small investors were forced to sell at the very low price, which caused a huge transfer of wealth from the small private people to the super-rich globalists. Now, why was it orchestrated by the super-rich? Was it because of the profit, as many say? No, they have more money than they need. They own the paper fiat money, and they use it to exploit the small people. Instead, we can find the reason in classified documents, which were once sent by the Department of Treasury to the Department of State in 1974, and which can be found on Wiki Leaks. In this document, we find the reason why they founded the precious metal future market at all, namely to make the holding of physical precious metal by US citizens unattractive, caused by the volatile movements of the price on the future market. In other words, the precious metal future market was founded and designed because of exactly one reason, namely to keep the ordinary private people away from holding gold and silver. Here we have it, black on white. So what did they achieve by bringing this huge volatility to the precious metal prices? They caused people to fear such heavy losses as were seen on January 30. There is now a massively fearful sentiment in the market, and they continue to exploit this sentiment further on. They release totally irrelevant information and say they are most relevant to precious metal prices, such as the omittance of interest rate cuts by the Fed because of possible increased inflation caused by oil price increases. They say this and people are shocked to the bones, such that nobody hazards to bet on increasing precious metal prices. But would you really sell your physical precious metal because someone says there could be an omittance of interest rate cuts in the future? Would someone with at least 3 functional brain cells sell gold because inflation rises? Not in lifetime. Inflation is in fact inseparably and positively related to gold price. When inflation rises, gold price rises. This is so because the worthless fiat paper money, which has been inflated massively, devalues only against assets, in particular gold and silver, as these are the ultimate assets. They are precious, rare, needed in industry, and cannot be extended arbitrarily. The value of gold was stable over thousands of years. You can buy a tailored suit for 1 ounce of gold today, and 100 years ago, and even in ancient Rome, 2000 years ago, you could buy a tailored tunica for 1 ounce of gold. It never lost its value, while the US dollar lost 95% of its value since 1972. So would you really sell your gold and hold paper money instead because of increasing inflation? No way! Inflation means paper money devalues against gold. But they found a way to establish a new narrative, namely that inflation decreases gold prices, and people believe this nonsense, and the gold price is indeed dropping. That's insane, ridiculous. It's the same ridiculous narrative they distributed some years ago, telling that COVID is a dangerous, deadly virus. You know how many deceived people got the poison shots. So it's just fabricated hysteria. And it all plays out only at the paper future market, where traders don't trade silver, they trade ups and downs, largely independent of the underlying asset. But has it really a negative effect on precious metal prices? The answer is clearly no. In contrast, it is much too myopic to say this and omitting the devastating consequences of increasing inflation for the economy, the governmental debts and the stricken paper money currency in general, which in turn revalues precious metals, which is the only real money. Paper money is printed without end, and thus is becoming worthless, while precious metal is limited and cannot be extended arbitrarily. I give you an example that makes it clear what is happening here. Imagine there is a community of 1,000 people who all want to buy a loaf of bread, and there is one bakery with the capacity to produce 100 loaves. What happens? Of course, the price is skyrocketing because of the tenfold higher demand. Only the 100 buyers with the highest willingness to pay can get a loaf. Then imagine there is another market besides the actual bread market. At that market, no bread is exchanged, but only the promise to deliver bread at a later date. They trade these promises and inflate the number of loaves to 3,000. These loaves are not existent. But they don't care because they don't want to have the loaf of bread actually, but only the profit from trading a paper with a price that goes up and down. They are trading the volatility, which of course increases volatility just by its own dynamic, not because of any physical constraints. That's the reason why the paper price can even decline while the actual physical asset faces huge overdemand. So it's all a big delusion and a huge swindle. Paper silver prices do not move because of real asset features or economic data. They move because of sentiment of volatility. And this is what they intended to induce. The high volatility due to intense speculations independent of the actual asset. This is what should prevent people from storing precious metal, which would be the only way of preserving wealth and maintaining freedom and independence. And this is exactly what they intend to prevent. They don't want that people can buy and sell independently of the money system. They want to expropriate and enslave people. That's the preparation for the Antichrist globalist tyrannic system, including the mark of the beast, such that nobody can buy and sell anymore without accepting that mark of the beast. They can only force the mark of the beast onto the people if they have no chance of buying and selling independently of the financial system they created, for example by using gold. They want to make you totally dependent on and enslaved by their digital financial prison system. That's why they want to ban gold.